When you sit down to write a wedding speech, should you take the time to script it out, to trim it, to workshop it, and to try to memorize exactly what it is you want to say? Or should you plan to speak more candidly, more off the cuff, from the heart, to wing it, if you will? The answer between these two approaches, 100% of the time, is no. Both of these will set you up for failure. So let's talk about how to write a good wedding speech. What's up guys, my name is Dave with Amari Productions, and if this is your first time here, we are a small creative studio based in Southern California, filming and photographing weddings all over the world. And on this channel you can find anything from some of our favorite wedding highlight films like Britt, one of our own. Actually, this is our studio manager, Britt. She got married in Cabo. I'll put that wedding up here. All the way to BTS daily vlogs on running a creative studio or how we go about our craft, like this one. Actually, this is also about a wedding in Mexico. But yeah, I'll put up Patty and Alonzo right here. So whether you are engaged or dreaming of a future wedding, or you yourself are creative, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you know every time that we post. And find us on Instagram and TikTok at, you guessed it, Amari Productions. In today's video, we are going to talk about writing speeches and how to write a good speech. And I am not some guru or some influencer or some like professional speechwriter that's gonna tell you like how to do it. Again, I am a wedding videographer. I am somebody who for 10 years has been filming these, not only filming speeches and observing them, but then in post, having to really break them, like rewatch them, literally like rewatch them and map out and break down exactly what was said. So over the years, what we started to figure out was some toasts were obviously very long, rambly, off the rails, kind of all over the place. Some toasts were very like short and just kind of felt like not really memorable. And then some toasts nailed it. And you may think that the ones that nail it are the ones that are super extroverted, that were like comedians in another life, you know, they can just work a room, work the mic, fire from the hip. Sure, those ones are fun. Those are like 1 in 100 anyways. The ones that are constantly successful, it has nothing to do with whether they're introverted, extroverted, whether they're guys or girls, whether they're comedic or sincere, whatever. Like it is the common theme in all of them that are successful are that they follow a very simple structure. But before we get into that structure, let's answer the question that we threw up at the top of the video. Should you script out your speech or should you speak candidly? And the answer is no. Because if you script out your speech, in theory, this is going to give you a better chance of having a successful speech because you have time to write it out, to write out multiple drafts, to workshop it, to bounce it off of other people, to read it back to yourself, to walk away, to trim it, to strike stuff, to add stuff. So in theory, this is going to give you a much more solid speech, and in text, it probably will. But there's two things you need to think about in this approach. One, to do this successfully, you need to be a speechwriter, and you're not a speechwriter. What do I mean by that? You could be comfortable writing out your thoughts, but your writing voice is not your speaking voice. And B, do you have a background in creative writing? Do you have a passion for creative writing or for copy or for like a journalism? Are you a journalist? You know, if these aren't your strengths, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. You could have fun doing this and be great at it. But yeah, if these aren't your strengths, I don't want you to try to force yourself into something that you're not comfortable in. So that's part one of this. That could be make this not as successful as it might appear on the surface. Part two is after you've written it out, let's assume you do write it out in a great speaking voice. It's exactly how you would say it if you were to speak live in the moment, candidly off the cuff. Now you need to be an actor or an actress. And you're not. You're not an actor or an actress. Just statistically speaking, you're probably not. So what's gonna happen, even if you write it out wonderfully, perfect speaking voice, exactly what you would say, here's how you're gonna read it. I first met Alex in high school when we were in track and field. Then in college, and you're going to talk in this tone. It's this monotone tone that you used in high school and in college when you gave your comms presentations, and it sounds nothing like your normal speaking voice. You also, as you have just noticed me, are going to forget to look up and make eye contact with the bride and groom, with your audience. It is just not going to be engaging. And that could be really, that's a bummer. You spent all this time writing this beautiful prose, but then in practice, in actually delivering it, it feels cold and disengaged because you're reading from a script. So that is not the best approach. But obviously, speaking candidly and off the cuff, I should say obviously, because some people do feel like they should go this route. Don't go that route. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna speak for 30 minutes. Okay, fine, you'll speak for 15 minutes. You're gonna be all over the place. Even if you are trying to be conscious of your time, for anyone that's done a presentation or done any type of public speaking in your life, you know you lose track of time. You know you lose your train of thought. You forget where you were going. You forget what you were saying or why you were telling a certain story. Or you just accidentally throw in stories that don't need to be in there, or go off on tangents that aren't adding value to your speech. So please, for the sake of everybody, please do not go up there and just say, hey, I had some things written down, but I'm just gonna speak from the heart. Don't do that. So if you shouldn't write it out, and you should not write it out, what should you do? There is a Goldilocks, there is a middle zone, there is a perfect happy medium, and that is to outline, to come up with a basic bullet points of what you want to touch on, what stories you want to tell, or what points you want to touch on. Having a basic outline will give you a structure to fall back on, to rely on, to use while you're actually there in the moment to make sure you stay on topic. But by having it just as bullet points, there's nothing there for you to try to memorize or for you to try to read off of. It is going to force you, it's going to allow you to speak more candidly, to tell these stories or to cover these points more candidly. So that is before we get into the actual template of how to write a good speech or what a good speech should look like, that is the approach that you should be taking as you map out what it is you want to say. I will give you one little asterisk on this though. For your hook, for the intro of your speech, obviously you want that to be strong. That's really it's the hook, it's the intro, it's the first like 7 seconds that really grab people. So if you have a great story to tell, if you have a story that you just like, it's the story you guys tell every time you guys get together, you and this friend group get together, this is like one of your favorite stories to tell at the bar or whatever. That's a great hook, you could lead off with that story. But if you're trying to actually write out an intro or a hook, then sure, you could write out and like memorize the first like 3 sentences of your speech. Because you shouldn't start a speech, FYI, shouldn't start a speech with like, for those of you that don't know me, or I first met, or like, don't make it about you. Don't just start off with like bland, generic, sentences. Try to start off with something more engaging. Try to hook people in. So that's the one asterisk on unscripting. But by taking this Goldilocks middle zone, what it is going to allow you to do is to be yourself. And that is my next point to you. Don't put pressure on yourself to be something that you're not. If you are somebody who's more quiet, then that can be your style when you're delivering your speech. Don't put pressure on yourself to try to be extroverted, to try to be overly funny. There is a leaf blower going on behind me, and it is getting closer and closer to my window, which means it's only going to get louder.
8 hours later.
Okay, it sounds like the leaf blower might be done, or at least far enough away that we can continue filming. While I was waiting for the leaf blower to go by, I realized I forgot to say that this is part 2 of a 2-part series. Part 1 was advice on writing your wedding vows. Same idea. We are just as often as we are working with wedding speeches to form the backbone of our wedding film, the story of our wedding films. We are doing the same with wedding vows, and so we did that video first. I'll put that up here. But this is part 2 on wedding speeches. And just like in that video, I'm going to tell you that if you are somebody who is nervous to be up there, own it. Just say it. Like, make that one of the first things you say. Like, just say it. You'll see it in the vows video. I'll give you an example of just how to just do that. So be yourself. Be comfortable in your own skin. That's what I want for you in that. Because remember, the audience is on your side. So there's no pressure on you to be something or to do something that you are not. The audience is with you. They're there to support you. So, and now that we have set up how to actually map this out, let's dive into this very, very simple template. I'm gonna give it to you in 5 easy bullet points, and then we'll talk a little bit about what to do in each one. The 5 stages or phases, or oh, that rhymed, of your speech should be intro. Obviously, you wanna hook people, you want a good story to open up with, something to get it started. Cold open, if you will, like they have on Saturday Night Live, cold open. Part 2, you're gonna talk about partner number 1, whichever partner you are there representing. So if you're a bridesmaid, you're going to talk about the bride. If you're a groomsman, you're going to talk about the groom. So that is part 2. You're going to talk about them. Part 3, you're going to naturally segue into partner number 2 because you knew partner number 1 first, and you can tell a story. We'll break this down in a second. But you knew partner number first, then you knew partner number two, so this naturally is going to segue into talking a little bit about the second partner. It's always weird when an entire speech is just about one person. Like, it's a wedding speech, but you only talk about the person that you're there for. So you're going to talk a little bit about partner number two, and we'll break that down in a second. Part 4, phase 4, stage 4, whatever. You're going to then naturally segue into talking about them together as a couple, which, oh, look at that. That's what we're here for. Them as a couple getting married. So speaking of that, let's segue into part 5. That's weird. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Part 5 is you're going to actually give a toast, a benediction, a charge. You're going to tell people to raise their glasses, and you're going to put a nice little bow on it and tie it up. Those are your 5 parts. Intro, partner 1, whoever it is you're there for, the other partner, them together, toast. When a speech follows that pattern and follows it well, doesn't go off on, by well I simply mean doesn't go off on tangents or start throwing in random stories speaking off the cuff. When a speech follows that template, it inevitably ends up being 4 to 6 minutes long, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer, but it ends up flowing seamlessly. It ends up flowing really well. The couple stays engaged, the audience stays engaged, and it just is a perfect speech. And that is regardless of how extroverted or introverted, regardless of how funny or whatever the toast giver, the speech giver was. Oh, and then the other thing, before we break into the individual pieces, the other biggest piece of this, each of those 5 sections, you gotta keep them to 5 sections, jeez. 5. Each of those 5 sections, you have to keep them to 60 seconds or less, so that your entire speech is 5 minutes or less. And I need you to say this back to me, because you're gonna end up writing a 12-minute speech. And that may not seem like that big of a deal, but when there's 4 toast givers or there's 6 toast givers, the difference between 5-minute speeches, 4-minute speeches, and 10 to 12-minute speeches is everybody sitting there listening to lectures, listening to people speak for 30 minutes, or everyone's sitting there listening to people speak for over an hour. Don't be that guy or girl. Don't be that person. Also, I should specifically say I'm really, really talking to you, Dad. When a speech goes to 30 minutes long, and it does, this happens, it's never bridesmaid, it's never a groomsman or a sibling, it is dad or mom, if mom's giving a speech at the wedding. Not all the time by any means. Dad or mom, when you get up to give a speech, please, this is not the time to tell the entire life story of Junior, from conception to present day. Please, mom and dad, follow this template as well. So let's dive into these 5 points and give you a little bit of advice on what these can look like, how to structure these, and then like a good speech, I'm gonna wrap this up and we're gonna get out of here. Okay, part 1. The intro. Like we've talked about a little bit already in this video, you want this to be a hook, you want this to be a cold open. You can think through specifically maybe a couple of lines you want to use to open the film, or you can just lead off with a really good story about partner 1, about the partner you're there to represent. So that story that you guys are telling at the bar, whenever you guys get together, whenever you're all back in town or something like that, you can lead off with that story that can double as both your hook and talking a little bit about the partner that you're there to represent. Then moving on into part 2, talking about the partner you're there for, partner 1. You can go about this in 2 ways, or a mix of 2 ways. One is through story, and then the other is through just talking about, like, in descriptive terms about this person, what you love about them, or what makes them so special, what makes them so unique. A great way to do this, and I think one of the most common ways, is to start that with a story. Pick a story that's a great story to tell, but as part of that story, we see something about the character or personality of partner 1. So we talk about a story, it's a great story, and about how they took care of everybody, how they made sure everybody was taken care of or something. They got you guys out of a sticky situation, whatever, and then you segue straight from that into talking about how, like, that's just who they are. They're always looking to take care of others. They're always selfless. They really love and care for their friends, and that's just what I love about John or whatever. So you see how you can do a story. The story doesn't have to cover every aspect of what you love about this person, but covers at least least something, and then you can segue that into talking a little bit more about what you love about that person. And then, like I said earlier, that will naturally segue you into talking about partner number 2, because you can just simply say, maybe your stories are about from college or from high school or whatever, from, when you guys were younger. And then part 2, or what are we on, part 3, when you're talking about the second partner, you can easily segue into by just saying, and then there was the one night where we went down to O'Reilly's or whatever. That's an auto parts store, not a bar, but roll with me on this. You could talk about, you just go straight into the story about how they met or how you first heard about them as a couple, but that's always a fun story. Usually it can be like a fun story to tell, basically how the second partner was introduced into the story. And then from there, you can tell like a story about that partner or how you saw them interact with your sibling or your best friend. Then you talk a little bit about what you see in partner 2. Partner 1, you've known forever, so you know them like the back of your hand, and you can tell people about why they're awesome. Partner 2, you've observed as the best friend, can like vouch for why, what makes them great, what makes them a great person. And then that will naturally segue into part 4, them as a couple. And so that's where you can seamlessly segue into talking about them as a couple, because you're talking about partner 2 and what you saw in them, and then you just seamlessly go into and that's what makes them great as a couple, or that's what I love seeing them as a couple, and you talk about them at That's great advice. You're welcome. You're welcome. But you talk about them as a couple. That can be a story. I feel like usually that part is the least likely to have a story element to it. That one's the most likely to just be more descriptive language, talking about what you see in them or how they complement each other or how happy they are together. But that could also be done via a story as well. And then obviously the last part is going to be the toast itself, and this is where not only do you have the responsibility to just remember to tell people to raise their glasses for something so that they can actually toast. That's what you're there for. But this is a great time to segue from past tense, present tense, like past to present tense of like all the things, all your stories, all your history, what you see in them, why they're awesome for each other, into future tense. Like we are here, we are married, and now we are toasting the rest of your life. We're sending you off onto the rest of your life, giving you a benediction, if you will, for the rest of your life. So that's where you will then, you'll pivot from the things you love about them into an actual toast to their marriage, to their future, to the 5 kids that you want them to have, or whatever it is. You can think over what it exactly is you want to toast. That's how you'll wrap it up, is with an actual raise your glasses, clink, toast. And again, this whole thing is going to be 5 minutes or less. So you're going to outline out each story or each kind of topic you want to cover in this structure. And then you can workshop it, and you can time it, see how long it's gonna be, and then try to make sure you're really aiming for that 5-minute mark. The last piece of advice that I'm gonna give you, I don't know why I put this at the end, because this is very important. It's gonna mirror one of the pieces of advice I gave in the vows video. I'm putting my finger up like I'm gonna put that video up again. I don't know, I guess we will. It's gonna be one of the pieces of advice I gave in the vows video, and that is don't plagiarize, please. In speeches, what is often plagiarized is not descriptive, obviously not stories or talking about what you love about them. In speeches, what is plagiarized often, and very often, is jokes from the internet, like wedding toast jokes from the internet. So don't do that. We're gonna know, first of all, like we're gonna have heard it a week ago and 3 weeks before that and 4 weeks before that, but whatever, like that's our job as videographers, is to we see that stuff, we'll give you grace. What's gonna be weirder is if like the bride or groom was at a wedding 2 years ago and they heard that same joke, or somebody, one of your like colleagues from work, because now they know that you're ripping jokes off of the internet and playing them off as your own. So don't tell Jack to put his hand on Jill and to savor the moment because it's the last time he'll ever have the upper hand. Like, come on, we've heard that joke 3 times this month already. So don't. Okay. Now, if you want to watch some of our most hilarious toasts, you can click this link up here, but let me give this caveat. If you're someone who is here because you're nervous about your speech, about writing your speech, I may recommend you don't watch this one right now because it is cherry picked. We're cherry picking the 1/10 of 1% of our wedding, so I don't want you to put added pressure on yourself. But if you can handle that, if you're not feeling that pressure, go have fun. Watch some really funny speeches as you work on writing your own. We'll let the algorithm put whatever it wants to put down here, whatever things you like best. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. This is probably longer than 20 seconds. My name is Dave. I'll see you next time.